Lorrie, Mum is perfect at giving injections. There's no point in hiring someone from outside.
Shawn persuaded his wife.
Besides, why do we need strangers in the house? Especially given your condition.
Yes, you're right, she replied in a weak voice. It's probably for the best, though I think all these injections are only worsening it.
Well, you know the disease is chronic. We're doing the best we can. You should be more grateful instead of complaining,
Shawn retorted and left the room. Lorrie had known about her spinal problems for a long time. At a young age, she was in an accident with her parents and was injured, but after treatment, everything seemed to have healed. Before the accident, there were 2 children in photos with their parents, but afterward, only she appeared. Her parents avoided talking about it. Once, Lorrie asked them directly, "Did I have a sister? I don't remember anything. If so, where is she?"
"We don't know ourselves," her parents replied, with tears in their eyes. "After the accident, the 3 of us ended up in the hospital. Your sister, who was a year older, was never found, alive or dead."
"How's that possible? Wasn't there an investigation, a search?" Lorrie wondered.
"There was, but nothing was found," her father replied. "We've long since lost hope that Gloria is alive." Since childhood, Lorrie had been an active child, first practicing gymnastics, then ballet, strengthening her back. Her parents supported her hobbies, sparing no expense, but at 16 she had to abandon her dreams of the big stage due to a serious injury. Lorrie focused on her studies, enrolled in university. Then the father sent her abroad to continue her education and improve her languages. Though not intellectually developed himself, he had a phenomenal flair for business and saw his only daughter as the continuation of the family enterprise. Lorrie's mother died of cancer when she was 20. Her father hid the bad news until the situation became dire. Lorrie barely made it home in time to say goodbye to her mother in the hospital ward. Since then, she hated all such institutions, and hospital walls filled her with homesickness and dread. When Lorrie turned 25, her father passed away, and she was left alone, the owner of a large business. It took her a couple of years to adjust to managing a huge manufacturing plant. There was no time or energy for anything else. Then, at a social event, Lorrie met Shawn. The handsome young man flattered her ego with his advances. Shawn spoke passionately about his studies abroad and his plans for business development. Lorrie offered him a job. Only later did it become clear that his education consisted of just a few courses and a degree from an obscure provincial college. They grew close and eventually married. Shawn moved into Lorrie's country house with his mother, Mrs. Stewart. Though trained as a nurse, she had never worked in her field. In Lorrie's house, Mrs. Stewart quickly made herself at home, shouting at the household staff, but fearing her daughter-in-law. Then Lorrie herself was in another accident. Not too serious, though she was convinced it was the same evil fate haunting her family. Something in her body malfunctioned, and the slightest movement caused pain. Lorrie stayed in bed more and more often. At 37, she didn't want to become an invalid. They invited doctors her husband found to their home. They offered new miracle remedies and even surgery, but Lorrie had no desire to go to a clinic, fearing she would wither away within those 4 walls, like her mother. Then her husband suggested, "Let's have my mum do all the procedures at home. Why go to a hospital? We'll buy a special bed to make it even easier for you to get up and change position." "Okay, I agree," Lorrie replied. "I have no strength for anything anyway, and showing up like this to business partners is out of the question. It's a wolf-eat-wolf world out there. Any weakness and they'll pounce." "I can run the business in your stead for now," Shawn offered. "I just need to expand my authority, get the right to sign documents." "Sure, honey. Thank you for being willing to take on that responsibility. But I'll be checking everything," Lorrie warned. "Of course," her husband smiled. "It seems we don't have any other choice."
The appointment of her spouse as her deputy was met with bewilderment by many in the company, but it wasn't customary to argue. Officially, Lorrie had distanced herself from the business to focus on her health, but no one knew her real condition. She suffered more and more, looked terrible, and sometimes experienced cramps, with her face and hands going numb. Only her mother-in-law was there, administering injections. Mrs. Stewart was a provincial woman, cunning but cautious. She cared for her daughter-in-law as if in the best clinics, always emphasizing how tired she was. "Lorrie, how are you today?" she would ask her daughter-in-law in the morning. "It hurts. Today is even worse," Lorrie would sigh. "The treatment isn't helping again. I'm even ready to consider surgery." "Well, one shouldn't rush into that," Mrs. Stewart would answer, helping Lorrie get up and go to the shower. "Do you know what the outcomes of spinal surgery can be? You're walking for now, but you might end up bedridden like a vegetable." "Did you really work in a hospital?" Lorrie tried to verify her mother-in-law's honesty. "I did, in gynecology. Saw all sorts of things there. Of course, not much was required of a nurse, and I only worked there briefly, but you can trust me." "Well, at least you have a gentle touch, and your injections don't hurt." Lorrie smiled weakly. "Remember that nurse we hired? She was a real butcher. I was bruised all over after her." Over time, Lorrie stopped looking in the mirror, disgusted by the changes taking place. Shawn visited his wife less and less frequently. He fancied himself a business tycoon, but in reality, he was just trying to grab as much as he could while he had access to money. However, large sums were out of reach, as Lorrie scrutinized the financial reports thoroughly. After a year of seclusion, Lorrie began to suspect Shawn's infidelity. There were reasons. He often disappeared from home and work, was suspiciously secretive. They no longer slept together, and discussions about children had ceased long ago. Lacking other listeners, Lorrie shared her suspicions with her mother-in-law. "Mrs. Stewart, do you think Shawn might have another woman?" she asked. "Oh dear, what are you saying? He's already working himself to the bone with your business, trying to keep it afloat. Where would he find time for women?" the indignant mother-in-law replied. "What are you imagining now?" "Maybe it's someone from work," Lorrie mused. "After all, he spends so much time there." "Oh, stop it. My son is an honest man," Mrs. Stewart defended Shawn. "He's doing so much to cure you." But thoughts of her husband's infidelity came more frequently. Lorrie became paranoid. Even Mrs. Stewart couldn't stand it anymore and decided to talk to her son. "Shawn, be careful. Lorrie suspects you," she warned. "Because of your so-called hobbies, we might be left without money and inheritance altogether." "Come on, Mum. I've got everything under control," Shawn answered cheerfully. "What can Lorrie see and do from her bed? Besides, please keep in mind, I hold all the cards right now. Lorrie's delirious state might even work in my favour. Just start the IVs and don't forget to switch the meds back to what I said. And keep giving her those vitamin shots. Let her think the medication isn't working." "Yes, you've grown cunning, son," Mrs. Stewart admired. "But still, be careful. I don't like her suspicions." Shawn was confident he could outsmart everyone. He even chose his mistress calculatingly. Her husband was the chief doctor at a well-known private clinic, and the mistress herself, Marisol, had a nursing diploma but never worked in her field. During her internship, she found her rich husband 15 years her senior and now lived comfortably at his expense. Through his mistress, Shawn learned about the effects of the medicines prescribed to his wife and what could safely replace them. Marisol understood everything perfectly and saw in Shawn a chance for change. She had grown tired of her dull doctor husband over the years. "Shawn, when your beloved spouse is gone, where shall we celebrate? The Maldives or Bali?" Marisol asked her lover as they relaxed in a country hotel. "We'll see," Shawn grinned. "First, I'll have to play the role of inconsolable widower.
You could say I've been preparing for it all my life. Then comes the long-awaited freedom.
I'll divorce my old husband. We'll get married. We'll have children, Marisol dreamed. Maybe I'll even be able to sue him for something. He won't leave his favourite wife on the street with nothing, will he?
You're not so simple either, Marisol, Shawn admired. They say opposites attract, but we're so much alike, you and I. Both enduring unloved spouses to escape poverty. Always wanting more.
Well, waiting for my husband to die would take too long. He's as healthy as an ox.
Marisol chuckled. You have a better chance of succeeding first. Don't rush. Maybe we'll work something out with him, too, Shawn promised his mistress. Of course, he wasn't seriously planning a future with Marisol yet, but she was the only person with whom he didn't have to pretend to be a good, loving husband. This time, Shawn was on his way to see his mistress. It was slushy outside, difficult to tell if it was winter or still autumn. A mix of snow and rain fell from the sky. Halfway there, already in the city, he got a call from Marisol. "Sorry, we can't meet today. I have a manicure appointment. The schedule changed and it's absolutely impossible to go out with horrible nails." Marisol, is your manicure more important than me, or what? Shawn snapped. I'm on my way to you in this mess. I'm almost there.
"That's it, honey, I can't talk. I'm at the station," Marisol replied and hung up.
Shawn abruptly turned the car around, splashing water and mud onto someone hitchhiking at the roadside. He slowed down for a better look. It was a skinny girl about 10 to 12 years, with blonde hair, holding a box, now wet and muddy. Shawn stopped at the curb and called out to the girl, "Hey you, come here!"
"Are you offering me a ride?" she asked hopefully.
"Yes, get in the car, but don't dirty anything," Shawn replied. "Buckle up in the back, there's no child seat. Put your box beside you. I hope there are no hamsters or kittens in there."
"I need to go to the post office," said the girl, "to send a parcel."
"I'll take you there. For now, let's go to my house. You can warm up, clean yourself and have some tea."
"You live alone?" The girl was frightened.
"No need for a ride. I'll get there myself." "Don't panic. I live with my wife and Mum," Shawn reassured her. "Then I'll take you to the post office. Take my word for it. Are you wandering around alone? Where are your parents?"
"I live with my stepfather. He's a heavy drinker," replied the girl. "And he doesn't give a damn about where I am."
Shawn got home quickly, parked in the garage, and took the guest, who didn't part with the box, inside. She marvelled at the luxurious interiors, gasping at the sight of the chandelier sparkling with millions of lights. Shawn entrusted her to his mother's care and went to his wife. "I brought a girl I met on the way. She was freezing, and I accidentally splashed her with water and snow. Let her dry off. Maybe she'll amuse you a little, by the way."
"Well done," Lorrie smiled weakly. "But won't her parents miss her? Who are they, and what's the girl's name?"
"Imagine, I didn't even ask her name," Shawn chuckled. "She says she lives with her alcoholic stepfather. You can find out more. In general, she's not dressed for the weather. Looks like she's from a troubled home." By this time, the girl came into the sick woman's room, wrapped in Lorrie's robe. She still clutched the box in her hands. Mrs. Stewart had sent her guest's clothes to the laundry.
"Hello, I'm Lorrie, and what's your name?" "Kelly. My mother called me that," the girl introduced herself.
"And where is your mum? Should we call home?" Lorrie asked.
"Won't they worry about you?"
"No, my stepfather doesn't care where I am, and my mum's in jail. I'm carrying a package for her to the post office."
"Don't you have any other relatives?"
Lorrie grew concerned. "How are you living with your stepfather?"
"Badly. He drinks, beats me, but there's no one else. Lee works, but he always gets angry at home. He hates me because my mum didn't give him a child, and I've never seen my dad. Don't worry, Lee got his paycheck yesterday. Thus, he won't look for me until he spends it. Then he might miss me."
"And the parcel is for your mum. What is inside?" Lorrie asked.
"I packed a little of everything, secretly, of course. Lee would have been angry. He said it was Mama's own fault. She'd gone to the wrong place and got what she deserved. It's a small parcel, a nightie, her favourite soap, some candy a neighbour gave me.
Tell me about your mother, Lorrie asked.
She's a doctor. Very good. Kind, beautiful. She even worked in a private hospital. We had a good life back then. I even went to a biology club. I want to be a doctor too, and I gave injections to the neighbour's cat.
What's your mum's name, and why did she go to prison?
Her name is Gloria. I don't know exactly about the prison. Lee says my mum saw something in a patient that the head doctor missed. The patient was treated wrong and died, and Mum was blamed. She's actually very honest and nice. She suffered for nothing.
I see. I'm sorry, I'm a little tired. Go, Mrs. Stewart will give you something to eat,
Lorrie whispered and leaned back helplessly on the pillows. Kelly tiptoed out of the room, quietly approached Shawn and asked, "What is your wife ill with? Should you take her to the doctors?"
"What? You think you're the smartest in the world?" Shawn was indignant. "They've examined her 100 times already. There's no cure, okay? Lorrie gets all the necessary treatments, but unnecessary curiosity is not welcome in this house."
"I see," Kelly sighed. Later, Shawn drove her to the post office, and then to her stepfather's house. There, a half-drunk Lee tried to sell Kelly to him.
"Look, the girl's a hard worker, a good one. She can babysit and look after a child."
"Are you crazy?" Shawn shouted at him. "She's just a child."
"So what?" Lee laughed. "Am I supposed to raise her on my own money now?"
"All right," Shawn muttered.
"I'll pay a little. The girl will live with us. My wife is sick. She sometimes needs help with small errands, and I don't want to stress my mother unnecessarily. Leave your phone number. Sometimes child services check on us."
Lee grinned.
$500 a month, and you can take her."
Shawn gave the drunken man the money and told Kelly to get ready. He thought that the girl's appearance in the house would distract his wife a little, and finally she would not torment him with her suspicions. In general, the girl seemed a good choice as a companion and distraction from his machinations. When Lorrie heard that Kelly would stay with them, she was very happy. She liked the little girl and felt sorry for her, wanting to make life a little easier for this lonely child. Lorrie ordered a room to be prepared for the guest next to her bedroom and sent her husband to the store to buy clothes and school supplies. Mrs. Stewart didn't like all this very much. She even asked Shawn, "Why did you bring that girl again?"
"I'll throw her out if I'd like to, but now I'm a hero in my wife's eyes and all suspicions are forgotten. You'd better try to make friends with her."
"That girl looks at me like a wolf. I feel she's going to be trouble," Mrs. Stewart said indignantly.
"I've said it all. Kelly will stay with us for now,"
Shawn muttered.
"You'd better think of something with injections, because lately Lorrie even seems to be better, and I'm counting on an entirely different outcome."
Mrs. Stewart only nodded. She couldn't explain her anxiety, but the little guest's presence in the house was unnerving, especially her attempts to see what she was injecting Lorrie with. The woman first caught the girl near the bucket where she threw out ampules on the second day of her stay.
"Where are you going? There's glass. You'll cut yourself,"
Mrs. Stewart shouted at her. "I grew up with my mother in the clinic, and I know how to handle ampules." The girl smiled. "And I can give injections. But these aren't medicines, just vitamins. How will they help?"
"It's not her illness that's going to help," the mother-in-law snapped. "I'm giving her a maintenance course now and painkillers at night, and you should do something useful instead of digging through trash cans."
Kelly turned away resentfully. Mrs. Stewart no longer left the ampules unattended, but it did her little good. Kelly had already stashed one, and seizing the moment, showed it to Lorrie. "I know for sure that you're not being treated at all," Kelly said excitedly. "They're just vitamins, and in quantities that they can cause allergies."
"Are you sure?" Lorrie said. "Why would they do this to me?"
"I don't know. Maybe your mother-in-law is confused about something, the girl answered. And then, you know, I grew up with my mum in the hospital and I learned some things. She even taught me to read test values and stuff. My mum joked that I could even pass the nursing exam already. I don't know. You're putting me in a very uncomfortable position right now, Kelly, Lorrie explained. It's your word against my mother-in-law's. Well, do you realise you could get better? What doctors have you seen? And, in general, what have they been doing with you? Oh, don't worry about that, Lorrie begged. This is grown-up business. The girl fell silent resentfully, then went to her room, while Lorrie began to ponder. Despite her weakness, she still kept her mind clear and realised she was really fading day by day. Her mother-in-law's injections had never brought her relief. Kelly only confirmed what Lorrie herself had long suspected. Meanwhile, Kelly, wishing to prove her point to the woman she liked, began to follow Mrs. Stewart even more actively. But the woman noticed and complained to her son. "Take her away for good. The girl is already spying on me. I can't live like this. Lorrie might find out something." "Mum, let her stay. Why does she bother you?" asked Shawn, who considered his mother's behaviour overly cautious. "I don't care. Just remove her, and that's it. Consider it a whim. Put her in an orphanage. With a stepfather like that, that's where she belongs." "Okay, maybe you're right. I may have gotten a little too relaxed. She's acting suspiciously and it could get in the way." Shawn, under the pretext of a joint shopping trip, asked Kelly to get ready. She got dressed, took the keys to the house. She had made a duplicate. Then got into the car, but realised the man was somehow too nervous. Shawn didn't really want to go far. He just wanted to get rid of her. He drove Kelly to her stepfather's house and said, "Sorry, Lorrie's getting worse. It's probably going to be unconsciousness and agony soon. I don't want you to be there. I'll bring your things later. Live at home, okay?" "Okay," Kelly nodded. "And it's not because your mother doesn't like me?" "No," Shawn muttered, surprised at the child's insight. Having solved the issue with the annoying and overly curious girl, he decided that he deserved a vacation and a reward. Shawn booked a room in a country hotel and invited his mistress there for the whole weekend. Marisol agreed, and he was glad. It had been a long time since they had been alone together. But the mistress warned, "Listen, my husband found our correspondence and started divorce proceedings. What an idiot! All right, let's see who's who. Honey, you'll get me the best lawyers, right?" "Of course, don't worry," he promised. "That's good. We just have to be doubly careful right now. If he catches me cheating and proves it, I lose everything." Shawn assured his mistress that he would be as careful as possible and would not put her at risk in any way. Meanwhile, Kelly had no intention of staying under her stepfather's care. Realising they were getting rid of her for a reason, she rushed to the bus stop and headed to the city. She arrived at the private clinic where her mother's former classmate and friend Tyler worked. Kelly burst past the receptionist's desk, flew into his office and caught her mum's buddy at his table, eating a sausage sandwich. "Kelly, what are you doing?" Tyler exclaimed. "Barging in, scaring people? How's your mum? Does she call or write?" "No, I don't know anything about her," the girl replied sadly. "I'm here because of a matter of life and death. Tyler, you must save a good woman." "What do you mean?" Tyler asked, bewildered. "What kind of urgency is this? How can I save anyone?" "This woman has been very sick for a long time," Kelly explained. "But I think she can be helped. Her husband and his mother are just waiting for her to become completely weak and die. She's rich, Tyler. She can pay for your services." "Wait a minute. What's this all about? And how do you know her?" Kelly told him everything. Tyler clutched his head. He understood perfectly well what he might be getting involved in, and he already had a mountain of problems in his life. The day before, he had found correspondence on his wife's phone from her lover, who called him an old donkey. Naturally, there was a scandal, and now a difficult divorce loomed. Marisol's lover was clearly not a poor man, and his wife threatened to take away everything Tyler had acquired during their marriage. The doctor didn't realise that Kelly was now offering to help him save the wife of that very lover. He just thought about how inappropriate this little girl's request was at the moment. But he couldn't refuse Kelly. Gloria, her mother, was his best and most loyal friend. Tyler packed a bag, informed his staff he'd be gone for a couple of hours, and left with Kelly to see Lorrie. The girl showed him the way, worried they wouldn't arrive in time to help. She opened the gate with a key, but the house was locked with an additional latch. They had to ring the bell until Mrs. Stewart opened the door. In her hand was a syringe filled with a colourless liquid. When she saw Kelly, she was surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I came to save Lorrie," the girl replied firmly. "This is the doctor. He's here to examine her." "No way!" Mrs. Stewart put her hands on her hips. "I'll call the police." "Go ahead," the doctor snorted, "and we'll try to prove that we didn't help the patient. Do you want to risk going to jail?" "Fine, look around, we have nothing to hide," the mother-in-law retorted. "And what's in that syringe you're holding? May I see the ampule?" "And her medical records and prescription," Tyler demanded. Mrs. Stewart went to fetch the documents. Tyler washed his hands and entered Lorrie's room. Together with Kelly, they explained the situation to her. She agreed to the examination, especially after learning that Tyler was a neurosurgeon with additional training in neurology, specializing in her type of trauma and problems. "You know," the doctor said grimly, looking at the woman, "I don't see any evidence that the needed treatments have been followed. With this diagnosis, you should have had surgery long ago to regain your mobility. This prolonged bed rest has only weakened you further." "Well, my husband and mother-in-law said surgery wouldn't work," Lorrie objected timidly. "Always consult several doctors," Tyler admonished her. "Here's what we'll do. Pack necessary things, I've called for a car, and we're going to the clinic. In your condition, I have no right to leave you here. Do you even know what you're being injected with?" "I'm giving her vitamins," cried Mrs. Stewart. "Who are you, anyway? Maybe you're a charlatan, a swindler. You're clearly in cahoots with this little girl."
"Hand over all her medical documents and passport," Tyler replied. "Lorrie, do you agree to be hospitalized?"
"Yes, of course," the stunning woman answered. "Kelly, thank you."
"We'll schedule surgery for the next few days. We'll run tests and examine you more thoroughly. But the situation is, frankly, alarming. We can't delay. Do you understand?" the doctor asked sternly.
"Yes, of course, I agree to everything. I'll sign any authorization," Lorrie replied. "Just take me away, quickly, please."
Realizing that Lorrie was going to the hospital, where their schemes would surely be exposed, the mother-in-law began calling her son. His phone was switched off. Shawn was enjoying his time with his mistress at a hotel and didn't want to answer. Soon, a car from the medical centre arrived. Lorrie was carried downstairs on a stretcher. Kelly, under her guidance, packed a bag with essentials. Then everyone left. In the commotion, Kelly was forgotten. She quietly made her way home. The 5-kilometre walk didn't seem long to the girl. She was both happy for Lorrie and worried about her. At home she found her drunken stepfather, not alone but with a crowd of unfamiliar people who didn't look like his usual drinking buddies. They said something to Lee, then slipped him a document. Kelly lurked in the hallway, watched her stepfather sign, and then saw him simply picked up under the arms and taken away. The girl managed to hide. She spent the next days alone in an empty house. Her stepfather did not return. During this time, Mrs. Stewart tried unsuccessfully to warn her son that they were in trouble. She called so insistently that the phone ran out of power almost instantly. Finally, on Monday, the son came home. Mrs. Stewart rushed to him with the news. "Shawn, we have a big problem. It's all the girl's fault, I told you. She brought some neurosurgeon, and I was just about to give her a shot. Anyway, they've taken Lorrie away. They're going to operate." "Wait, what are you talking about?" Her son yanked her away. "What do you mean, taken away? Where were you?"
"Well, Shawn, she gave her consent to be hospitalised in a paid clinic, and I wrote down the name. Shawn looked at the piece of paper his mother was holding out and grinned. This particular clinic was headed by his mistress's husband. The case might be easier than it seemed. "OK, Mum, take your time," he said. "Maybe I can still influence this doctor." He immediately dialed Marisol's number. She lazily picked up the phone after the 10th ring. "Shawn, have you missed me already?" "No," he answered rudely. "I'm calling on business. Look, my wife is now in your husband's clinic. I need him to refuse to operate on her." "And what do you want from me?" Marisol was indignant. "Breaking into his operating room? Rip the scalpel out of his hands?" "Well, no, not that radically. I don't know. Offer him money. Promise him something. I don't limit the expenses. It's a matter of our well-being." "All right, I'll try," Marisol promised. In the evening she waited until Tyler returned from work. She came out to him in a short robe, smiling sweetly, and asked, "Tired, honey? There must be a lot of work." "What do you care?" the man replied rudely. "How long have you been interested in my work?" "Well, it's not only me who cares about it," Marisol replied. "There's an opportunity to make money simply by refusing to operate on one woman." "Who?" Tyler asked. "Wasn't it a new patient brought from some closed country village?" "Yes, her. Lorrie Murray, to be clear. It's enough to deny her the operation, and you can keep your property and part with me quietly." "Do you want that easy outcome?" "Actually, honey, I took a doctor's oath." Tyler was indignant. "Come on, honest ones don't become head doctors of clinics, darling." Marisol laughed. "OK, I'll tell Shawn that it didn't work out." "How interesting. It is a coincidence that Shawn is the name of your lover?" Tyler was indignant. "Are you idiotic enough to ask me for something like that?" Marisol snorted and left. Tyler packed a bag and left. It wasn't the first time he'd spend the night at work, and for some reason he didn't want to leave the patient alone, the one who so insistently wanted to destroy those closest to her. The next day, the tests were ready, and Lorrie was given a few IV drips. She felt much more awake, there was no fog in her head, and her appetite returned. This only strengthened Tyler's opinion that she had been injected with more than just harmless vitamins. He didn't hesitate and scheduled the operation for the next day. In Lorrie's case, time had already been criminally wasted. In the morning she was prepared and transported to the operating room. Tyler and his team performed a complex operation on her spine, removing herniated discs, pressing on the nerve endings. But it became clear later that another intervention would be necessary. The trauma and improper treatment had severely damaged her spine. Titanium elements would have to be implanted so that Lorrie could walk normally again. She was to spend a few more days in an induced coma for more effective recovery. During this period, Tyler forbade any visits. Only he and a limited number of trusted personnel could enter the patient's room. The doctor realized that in such a state she was particularly vulnerable, and Lorrie could be in real danger. Having finished his work at the clinic, he still couldn't push away thoughts of Kelly, who hadn't given any sign of herself. Tyler decided to go to her house. In an empty apartment with an open door, he barely found the girl. She was sleeping on her mother's coat in the closet. From a document left on the table, it became clear that her father had signed over the apartment to some people to repay debts. Tyler woke Kelly and took her with him. They gathered the girl's documents and the most necessary things. "You see," he said, "I'm homeless myself now, so I'll have to live in the clinic. Are you okay with that?" "No problem at all. I lived like that with my mum too, until she got in touch with Lee." Kelly smiled. "I like hospitals. They're quiet and clean. Can you get in touch with Mum?" "Yes, we'll write to her. Try to call her, so she won't worry." Tyler took Kelly with him and they settled in the large reception room of his office. There was a sofa where the child could sleep comfortably. On the way they bought blankets and pillows. They also brought bedding. Tyler made a bed for himself on the couch in the study. He postponed calling Gloria, Kelly's mother, who was in the colony, until tomorrow. He had to figure out how to do it first. Meanwhile, Gloria was on her way home, unexpected to anyone. In general, she sincerely considered her release a miracle. There had been no chance of getting justice at the trial. She had been framed very competently and quickly. Gloria couldn't even do anything. She hoped that Lee would at least not abandon Kelly, but she wouldn't count on him seriously. When she was transferred to the colony, life became easier. The head of the penitentiary had a daughter, Nancy, the same age as Gloria's Kelly. The woman grew sincerely attached to the little girl, who was loved by everyone. Nancy's father raised her alone, as her mother had died during childbirth. He doted on his daughter, who often played near his office. The colony had medical care, but it was merely nominal. The elderly paramedic looked as if he had been born in the century before last. His medical arsenal consisted solely of aspirin. Word spread that Gloria had been a great doctor before her incarceration, and soon people sought her help. One day, while working in the uniform sewing shop, the frightened head of the colony burst in, screaming. Unable to speak, he frantically swiveled his eyes and moaned, managing only to grab Gloria's arm and drag her outside. There on a bench lay little Nancy, in the arms of a pale paramedic. Gloria immediately realized the girl wasn't breathing. She began resuscitation, shouting for someone to call an ambulance. After a few chest compressions, it was clear the girl couldn't breathe. Gloria then applied a technique taught by an elderly professor at the hospital. Suddenly Nancy wheezed, coughed, and with a loud sob drew air into her lungs. The head of the colony collapsed into the flower bed at Gloria's feet, sobbing. Gloria held the frightened, wailing Nancy and cried herself. Later, they discovered that Nancy had choked on a sandwich she had eaten while running. The bread had blocked her airways. If Gloria hadn't acted quickly, even the ambulance might not have arrived in time. A month later, the head of the colony submitted a recommendation for Gloria's early release, which was granted. She was overjoyed, unconcerned about her ruined career. She only wanted to see and hug her daughter. However, arriving at her apartment from the train station, she found the locks changed. Strangers' voices came from behind the door, and they refused to open it. Panicked, Gloria called Tyler. "Tyler, it's me," she blurted out. "Listen, I think I have a problem. I can't get into my home." "Wait, where are you calling from?" he asked, confused. "I'm in town. I got out on parole." Gloria smiled. "Can I come to you?" "I'm living at the clinic myself. Your daughter's with me too," Tyler replied, smiling. "Come over. There's a lot of news." An hour later, Gloria arrived at her friend's place. Kelly clung to her mother's neck, not leaving her side. The girl was terrified her mother might disappear again. That evening, they fell asleep on the same sofa, after Tyler shared all the news with his friend. Though not entirely comforting, there was still hope to overcome their difficulties. The next week passed in a blur. Lorrie regained consciousness, but was too weak. But as Lorrie recovered and regained consciousness, the pallor of her skin disappeared. She began to gain weight, and her face no longer resembled a skull covered in skin. Gloria and Kelly spent considerable time in her room as Lorrie slowly recovered, and strange thoughts crept into Tyler's head as he compared both women's appearance. While the patient no longer required such close attention, Tyler focused on his divorce. His wife had declared war, hiring an expensive lawyer. She intended to take everything, but somehow that seemed less important now. Tyler suddenly realized his entire marriage had been a mistake. He rented a 2-bedroom apartment for himself, Gloria and Kelly. The girl temporarily switched to homeschooling, with the school's cooperation. Kelly's stepfather never appeared, and Gloria doubted he was even alive. Their former apartment now housed different tenants. 2 weeks later, the genetic test results arrived, confirming Tyler's suspicion. And he hurried to share the news with Gloria and Lorrie. "Listen, here's the thing. I did a test. I don't know why. I just had the feeling that you might be a relative."
And there is proof that you are definitely close relatives," the man said anxiously, showing them the test results.
"You know, I had a sister named Gloria when I was a child," Lorrie replied. "She went missing in an accident and they never found her body. But how could a child have survived?"
"I don't know. I grew up in an orphanage from age 3, Gloria answered uncertainly. "Maybe they kept my name after seeing it on my clothes or something."
"Amazing. Our parents have been looking for you all your life. The police even have a file somewhere," Lorrie said with a sad smile. "But I found you here." "Oh, I'm so glad Kelly sounded the alarm and you were saved. I would have lived without knowing I have a sister." "That's nothing. Now, Gloria, you'll be a rich woman. I'll give you half of everything I own. It's my parents' inheritance, and Kelly will be provided for life. You can be calm about her future." The sisters embraced, and Lorrie began to make plans. She was already feeling better and was in touch with her subordinates. From then she learned everything Shawn had been doing for the last year. He didn't even try to hide his mistress. She revoked her husband's power of attorney before she was discharged and insisted that Tyler, her sister and niece, move from their rented accommodation to her house. "Look, what am I going to do there alone? Tyler, you'll still transport me to the procedures and be under supervision, and I won't abandon the girls now." "Okay, it's good when a patient needs the care of a doctor," Tyler smiled. During this time, he had fallen in love with Lorrie. She also felt sincere sympathy for him, but she was still only planning a divorce. "I have one condition. You must change rooms. I forbid you to run on the second floor. And then, you know, it's so romantic, sitting there like a princess in a tower," Lorrie smiled. "Oh, sister, stop hitting on my fellow student." Gloria pretended to be indignant. "First, get divorced, and then you can mess with Tyler's already poor head." At the house, they had to face Mrs. Stewart. Laurie's mother-in-law was in no hurry to leave, and her son still came here to spend the night, although more often he stayed with his mistress. Seeing her daughter-in-law, Mrs. Stewart's face changed as Lorrie walked with her own feet in the house, though leaning on Tyler, but quite confidently. "Lorrie, you've recovered? What a joy! And Shawn isn't home, he's busy with your business," her mother-in-law said affectionately. "And what are you doing here?" Lorrie narrowed her eyes. "You know what? Get out, or I'll call security from the office right now." "How could I? Where will we go?" Mrs. Stewart wailed. "My son is coming and I'm not here." "Call him. Let him come too," Lorrie replied angrily. "Meanwhile, I'll call the guards and my deputy. We'll talk." Upon learning that his wife had returned, Shawn rushed back. He realized the scam was exposed. The bank card confirmed it. When he put it into the ATM, he found the account was blocked. In a rage, Shawn drove to the village, dreaming of confronting his wife. But people from their office were already on duty at the gate. Under the gaze of the burly young men, Shawn calmed down and silently walked along the path to the house. In the living room, his mother was sobbing, sitting on her suitcases, and in the kitchen was Lorrie, serious and focused. "Well, hello. You do realize you're out of our marriage with a bang, don't you? Out of the house, too. Please keep in mind we have a contract, honey." She smiled. "I'm not crazy enough to throw my father's fortune at the feet of some smarmy guy, am I?" "Lorrie, what did I do?" Shawn tried to justify himself. "Why did you block my card?" "You were withdrawing money there, weren't you?" She grinned. "Well, now you'll have to live without it." "You wretch!" Shawn threw his fists at her, but was stopped by the guard's strong arm. "And now what?" "Go to your mistress. Divorce papers will come with the courier." "My lawyers will take care of it," Lorrie replied indifferently. "Also, rejoice that your mum stays free after all she has done to me, according to your plan." "Come on, I didn't know anything. She's on her own." Shawn tried to change his wife's mind. "I've always loved you, and I love you now too." "You'll sing that to Marisol. By the way, the jewellery, bought with my money, she'll have to return it. I don't want to upset you, but none of you will live well. I'll take care of that." "And the job, a car?" Shawn asked excitedly. "What about them?" "That's what the audit will show." Lorrie smiled. "The auditors are working, assessing how much damage you've done to the business. The car, of course, remains with the company. It's a company car. And I'm not going to work with you. Look for a new place. If you don't go to jail." Shawn looked at her furiously and realised his life was falling apart. He and his mother were escorted out the door. The car keys were taken away, and he nearly burst with anger as he hailed a cab. When her husband and mother-in-law left, Lorrie leaned back on the kitchen sofa and exhaled with difficulty. The conversation wasn't easy for her, but she had her loved ones around her, and that gave her strength. The divorce from Shawn took a couple of months. Her ex-husband was left without money, cars, and other benefits. And in the business world, he now had such a reputation that finding a job wasn't worth dreaming about. 6 months later, Lorrie had another surgery, after which she felt noticeably better. She went to the sanatorium for rehabilitation, accompanied by her sister and niece. This was especially good timing because auditors were still working in the company. Lorrie was going to give half of her property and the fortune to Gloria, as it was supposed to be inherited from her parents. Gloria was indeed the little girl who had disappeared during the accident. The story of her happy rescue was reconstructed in detail. It turned out that she had fallen out of the overturned car. At first, she wasn't even looked for, as the adults were unconscious. They were taken to the hospital with Lorrie, and Gloria, whose name was embroidered on her blouse by her mother, miraculously didn't get a scratch. Later, a group of nomadic gypsies found her crying in the bushes. They took the child with them, raising her without documents as their own daughter, and eventually teaching her to beg. At the train station, kind-hearted people noticed a light-skinned but clearly underfed and starving 5-year-old Gloria. They took the little girl to the police station, but her parents and relatives couldn't be found. Gloria was sent to the orphanage, 1,000 kilometres away from her hometown. That's where she had been found at the train station, and where she returned by chance years later to enter medical school. Of course, she didn't remember any of this herself, and certainly couldn't have guessed that she was practicing in the very maternity hospital where she was born. After the sanatorium, Lorrie fully recovered. She even started driving again, something she had stopped dreaming about. Her romance with Tyler was blossoming. Soon after his beloved's complete recovery, he proposed. Lorrie accepted, and they were married shortly after. Gloria, thanks to her money and connections, was able to take revenge on those who had wronged them. She bought the clinic where she used to work and fired the chief physician and his underlings for unprofessionalism. Now, she thoroughly vetted all staff with the help of the security service and her sister's company, ensuring their qualifications and responsibility. Soon, changes came to her personal life as well. A recently widowed but very wealthy man came to Gloria's clinic for treatment. His case was complicated, and he spent a couple of months in the clinic, during which time he grew close to its owner. After his discharge, the former patient proposed to Gloria. She had to divorce her missing husband, who was never found. It took some time, but Gloria's beau made efforts for the sake of his beloved. Regaining her freedom, she married her new husband, who had no children of his own, and happily adopted Kelly. At her sister's wedding, Lorrie didn't feel well. The bright, appetizing dishes didn't appeal to her, and the smell of flowers made her dizzy. Watching his wife, Tyler grew worried and anxious, but Lorrie quickly dispelled his concerns. "Tyler, I wanted to tell you later, but I'll have to tell you now," she smiled. "I'm pregnant." "What? Wait, why didn't you tell me right away?" Tyler stood there grinning stupidly. "Well, we only took the test yesterday, and then Gloria dragged me straight to her doctor for a checkup. Now I'm officially being monitored for pregnancy. She smiled. "Tyler, I was sure I couldn't have children at all."
"Oh, well, that's it. No more heavy lifting. Only swimming," the husband said strictly, then broke into a smile again.
Kelly was delighted with the news of her aunt's pregnancy. She was already anticipating how she would dote on the baby boy or girl. The fate of Lorrie's ex-husband wasn't so rosy. Shawn and his mother were forced to return to their small apartment. After living in his former wife's palace, such modest accommodations seemed like a cruel joke. Their lack of money led to constant quarrels. Shawn blamed his mother for not finishing the job and held her responsible for all his failures. The fact that he was now unemployed angered Shawn even more. He tried to sell his wife's gifts and start his own business, but failed miserably. The venture collapsed, leaving Shawn in debt to the bank, where he had taken an additional loan when his own capital ran out. He separated from his mistress during the divorce. Realizing that her lover had cut off the money tap, Marisol began to behave more cautiously. She even conceded part of the real estate to her ex-husband, content to remain in a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment. Overall, she was satisfied with the situation. But after a while, Marisol's conscience began to trouble her. She kept dreaming that Lorrie was dying because of her, because she hadn't performed the operation, and these visions gave her no rest. The woman even went to church to repent. There, she was advised to work in a hospital to atone for her sins through labour. Marisol got a job as a nurse in an ordinary clinic, in the most challenging department for bedridden patients. She didn't work for the paycheck, she worked diligently, and it seemed to be helping her heal.